Welcome to Inside Athletic Training, a podcast from the Professional Baseball Athletic Trainer Society and the ultimate destination for athletic training professionals, students, and educators looking to learn more about sports medicine and athletic training. In each episode, we'll dive headfirst into conversations with experts in the field, bringing you insights, stories, and cutting-edge information about athletic training and sports medicine. This week on Inside Athletic Training, we welcome in Jacob Legan, head athletic trainer for the Akron Rubber Ducks, the AA affiliate of the Cleveland Guardians. Enjoy the show. All right, Jacob, welcome to Inside Athletic Training. Excited to have you on for episode 45. You're currently the AA athletic trainer with the Cleveland Guardians organization. Before we get into the details about your current role with the Guardians, let's share a bit with the listeners about your background. Let's take it way back to the beginning. Tell us where you're from, what sports you might have been into growing up, and also how you found your liking for athletic training.
Certainly a pleasure to be on and join you guys. So originally from Jacksonville, North Carolina, grew up pretty much playing whatever sport was available, whatever was in season. I grew up in a military family, and so that was, a lot of our time was kind of spent whatever was an available outdoor activity, that's what we did. And as I kind of grew up a little bit, that kind of shifted a little bit more towards, baseball and basketball. And I definitely kind of had a passion for both of those. I probably enjoyed baseball the most, but was probably a little bit better at basketball. But, that kind of shifted. As I kind of found my passion for, athletic training as I shifted into high school and realized that at some point my career for a rather average athlete was probably going to come to a close after high school. If I wanted to stay in sports, I was going to have to kind of find a different path. And I had a pretty significant back surgery my freshman year of high school that, limited some of my sports participation early on in high school, and that kind of got me interested in a little bit in anatomy and rehab processes, and coupled with that with some sports medicine classes in high school, that kind of piqued my early interest in athletic training and what a career in sports medicine could look like after the high school playing days were finished. So that was kind of where I got my initial interest in spark of what this could look like as a career.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, interesting to hear. A lot of people, you and your colleagues across the league, a lot of them started with an injury and finding their way into the athletic training room in high school from there, and really just fell in love with it. So that's interesting to hear that common theme. I want to start today by talking a bit more about your education before you got into professional baseball. Very impressive resume. Just run down the list here: bachelor's degree from seemingly a powerhouse athletic training school in Eastern Carolina. A lot of our members from there. Master's from the University of Akron and a doctorate in athletic training from Temple University. Can you share a bit about how your education shaped you as an athletic trainer, and maybe your experiences, some things you might have changed or done the same? Just want to hear more about that process, since you have so much experience in education and athletic training.
Yeah, absolutely. So, I was very fortunate to go to a place like East Carolina that had such a rich history of, in athletic training, as one of the oldest athletic training programs in the country, and, very kind of rigid and, strict, program at that. And I obviously learned more about that as I was kind of researching, where I wanted to go to school, and, learn more about, some of the rich history and some of the alumni that, had been through that program. And I think that, that was so instrumental in shaping me and, what I was, working to become, as a future athletic trainer. And, so many great mentors at ECU, one being, Zach Womack, who, he had worked with the Yankees for 7 years, and I had an idea that I wanted to work, in professional baseball, and he was just a great sounding board
Hmm.
for me as I kind of, worked into my education there. And if I could go back and, change some things, I think early on, it's tough as an 18 or 19-year-old to see the full picture. And school is not always necessarily the most, fun thing in the
Sure.
world, but understanding that process is not going to stop, especially in a field like this. And everything is constantly changing, and there's constantly, new certifications and, new exposure to, research and other, things that you have to get comfortable in that learning process, because it's something
Hmm.
that's not going to go away and it's not going to stop. And I think if I could go back and, embrace some of that, I think I did a pretty good job of embracing like the clinical setting. I found that extremely interesting and fun, but I think that early on in college, I could have probably set myself up a little bit better for success early, by, maybe making a little bit more of a, strict dedication to, the academic side of things. I did okay, and I did, fine overall, but
Hmm.
I could have been better in that sense. And, just it, looking back on it, hindsight's always 2020, but, it was a great experience, and ECU definitely kind of really helped mold me, and I'm appreciative of what that program provided me.
Hmm. Yeah, obviously, a young 18-year-old trying to figure things out. You're not going to know what you need to do or how to do it at that point. So I think it's the same for any career. Just finding your way through college is always tough at the beginning. You stayed in education for quite a while. Recently earned your doctorate in athletic training from Temple University, a huge accomplishment, to say the least. Was there a main reason you wanted to pursue that degree? Have you always been someone who really enjoyed school and education, or was it something more that you thought would really be a benefit throughout your career as a professional in athletic training?
Yeah, so to answer that last part first, definitely not somebody who has always enjoyed school or education. Like if you would have asked me after I finished my undergrad work, I would have been like, there is no chance I'm ever going to do that much
Hmm.
school. But again, kind of, getting to understand that this is a, evolution and process. It took some time for me to get to the point, especially after my master's degree, of, working clinically, to understand that, hey, there's probably more out there for me to do. And I think part of it is, a pursuit to continue learning and to continue getting better. There's time management that goes into getting a degree like that. There's, organizational type skills that come along with, the actual coursework. And so, there are a lot of things that, came out of that were beneficial. And I mean, part of it too is you get to the higher levels in professional baseball, there are so many good clinicians, and I think we all have aspirations of wanting to work, at the highest levels. And you have to explore things that are going to help, kind of separate you from the pack and help get you to where you want to go. And not that
Hmm.
extra letters after your name or credentials are going to do that, but they do demonstrate hopefully a passion of continued learning. Somebody who's, willing to, take on self improvement. And I think that was part of it for me. Of it was going to be a necessary step as I kind of take these, next moves in my athletic training career and try to get to where, I want to be at the end of the road. And it just kind of seemed like a necessary step, and it was challenging but very, rewarding at the same time.
Hmm. And what I'm really interested to hear about from you, from your perspective as a athletic training professional with so much educational background, thinking back on those experiences in school, whether it's bachelor's all the way to your doctorate, was there anything that stood out to you during that time that really helped you prepare or feel ready to become an athletic trainer in professional baseball?
So I think that, I mean, all of the educational, ventures have been beneficial in at least laying some of the framework, but I don't think that any of that can make up for the years of clinical experience, making mistakes along the way, and trying to learn from some of those things that you may have screwed up in the past. And just having so many, great people, whether it was at ECU or at the University of Akron or here with Cleveland, of people that, have been willing to invest in me and, make sure that I was on the right path to success. I think that those clinical experiences have probably, been the most beneficial along the way in trying to, help develop me into, the professional baseball athletic trainer that I am currently. But again, the educational ventures have certainly played, a part in that, and it's been, it's been very impactful, and it's definitely an important piece of the puzzle. But those mentors and those clinical experiences that I've had over this time, have just been, super beneficial and kind of preparing me for where we're at today.
Mm-hmm. And to piggyback off that a little bit, you've obviously been through this process. You've gone through your education, landed a job with a pro ball team, and you're still plugging away. When you look at students today, obviously a ton of information out there, more than you had when you were coming up. And you said the clinical experience is so hugely important, but is there any other pieces of advice or a piece of best advice that you would give to a student now who one day wants to be in your position?
Yeah. And I think with the way that athletic training has shifted over the last few years, to being a master's program, a lot is being asked of students in a short period of time. And, some of the clinical experience, maybe a little bit more condensed, and it's a new thing that we're all having to kind of evolve in. And I would and it may be a little bit more difficult too for students to, achieve like internships, because summers are filled with classes and other, immersive experience, because they're trying to pack things into, a 2-year period, but trying to, as much as you can, connect with your alumni bases, try to, seek, what, some unique opportunities may be away from your school that you can do a clinical rotation, and try to get a vast variety of experience. I mean, when I was an undergrad, everybody wanted to work football. Football was, at the Division I level, was kind of the peak, and you wanted to work that in season, and that was kind of the pinnacle. And I was the same way. Like I wanted to work that, but I quickly found out that even though I got an opportunity to do that, that it was not for me. Like that was not the experience that I wanted. And that was not the setting that I wanted in. So just trying to, give yourself a diverse experience, during your school, to try to help you figure out, what you want to work in, and help kind of plan next steps of, hey, do I want to do a residency in this type of setting? Do I want to do an internship here? And then trying to, not being afraid to, reach out and try to take advantage of, those opportunities. I think there's a lot of opportunities out there that, students may or may not, be aware of. And just trying to diversify your experience and give yourself a little bit of an idea of how you want to kind of go about your career.
Mm-hmm. And shifting gears a bit, I think one of the most, impactful and helpful parts of this podcast is sharing, how you got started, how people across the league landed a job in baseball, because we know how competitive that can be. So I know you started as an intern with the Tennessee Smokies in 2012. Talk a bit about that internship. Share a bit about your experiences, about how you got that position, also what it was like, stepping into pro baseball for the first time.
Yeah, so it was kind of a whirlwind. I had, done a rotation of baseball at ECU with Zach, who I mentioned earlier, and he had some kind of ideas about how, professional baseball worked, and helped get me linked up to apply for a PBATS internship. And at that time, you could apply for 3 teams, whether minor league, major league. Like you just got to pick 3 teams, and that was kind of that. And so I was fortunate enough that an athletic trainer with the Cubs, reached out to me and asked me if we went through a little interview process, and asked me if I wanted to come spend the summer there. And my grandparents lived about an hour away from the stadium. Again, I was trying to find anywhere where I had maybe some family close where I could make it work. So a lot of these internships, were unpaid, and
Yeah.
you basically were kind of trying to, get the experience that you needed. And I was very, very fortunate. So AJ Larson was the athletic trainer. He's no longer in baseball. He kind of shifted away from that, but he was so gracious to me and gave me such a great experience that summer. I actually ended up, so I didn't have to drive the hour back and forth to my grandparents' house every day. I would crash on his couch and basically lived with him and the strength coach that summer in their apartment, and basically was just there to kind of soak in whatever I could that summer. I was given an opportunity to go on a few road trips, which was super beneficial to truly get an idea of what all the athletic trainer was really doing. There's so much of that, baseball operations, travel agents, stuff that was going on that, I may not have got exposed to. And so I really got fully, immersed that summer. And it was definitely a whirlwind. I had no idea what I was doing, even though I thought I had an okay idea. But it was such a great learning experience. And I'm just super grateful for that opportunity. Even something as simple as, he was sharing a room with me on the road. And that's something that I've grown to as an athletic trainer now. That's sometimes your solace. Like, that's your place where you can go and nobody's going to ask you questions. And, he sacrificed that for me several times that season to make sure that I was getting a well-rounded experience. And so it was a great starting point, and definitely kind of springboarded me to the other, the other opportunities that came on, down the road.
And you talked earlier about diversifying those experiences, whether that's in college or working different sports. And you definitely put your money where your mouth is in your career. You've had diverse experiences. After your time with the Smokies, you interned with the Akron Arrows in 2013. You also spent time as a graduate assistant athletic trainer at the University of Akron. I know there you worked multiple sports, track and field, cross country, other things like that. One thing I'm always interested to hear from you and your colleagues across the league is how experiences in different sports can impact and benefit your career. Talk a bit about that and how maybe not having a singular focus on baseball for your whole career has really helped out.
Yeah. So, the time at Akron was definitely kind of a whirlwind. And I graduated from East Carolina in 2012. I initially was in December of 2012. I was initially going to, do a double major in health education and come back in the spring and do a teaching rotation just in case I ever wanted to be an athletic trainer in high school. Like, it was just going to be potentially an easy way to set up. But after I'd done my internship in 2012, I was like, okay, we're scrapping that plan. This is what I want to do. But there weren't, really a ton of job opportunities that, came along during that time period. And so I really wanted to make sure that I continued on with school while also kind of keeping the baseball focus in the, in the back of my mind, and making sure that I was doing things to kind of move towards that direction. And so not a lot of graduate assistant positions would come open during the middle of the year like that, but there were a couple places that had some people leave for whatever reason. And I was fortunate enough that Akron had a spot open. I would have never imagined moving to Akron, Ohio from North Carolina in the middle of winter. It wasn't something that I had planned, but it worked out. And I was fortunate enough to work with the track and field and cross country teams there. And it's such a unique sport because you have various types of athletes all on one team, from, distance runners to throwers to different types of field athletes to sprinters, and they are all very different in their own right. And so I was very fortunate to get a very diverse, group to work with. And it was definitely a humbling experience. Again, you kind of come out of undergrad thinking you have a little bit of an idea, and you get thrown to the wolves and start going on road trips and whatnot, and you start figuring out how much you don't know. It was such a great experience, getting to spend time. with what was a pretty competitive track and field team too. Akron had a pretty good team in there, and they were future Olympians and world champions on that team. And it really was a great first exposure in conjunction with that next baseball internship that, just kind of happened to work out with a fellow ECU alumni in Akron. No, I'm very, very thankful. It also reinforced to me, though, too, on the other side of things, that I didn't want to work track and field. Like, that was a great experience, and I really thoroughly enjoyed it. But completing my second baseball internship at Akron, it reinforced to me, like, hey, this sport is not for me. It's been great, but I still want to work baseball. And I think that I grew a lot during that time period, and it was a good experience, even though I was there for kind of a short period of time.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, we've heard from a lot of athletic trainers that working different sports doesn't necessarily land you in the sport you want to be in, but it lets you know what you might want to avoid. So that's the same sentiment there from you. Now you've been a minor league athletic trainer with the Cleveland Guardians organization since 2014, so almost a decade of experience at the professional level. While navigating the minor leagues and leading up to your current role with the organization, has it been what you imagined it might be when you first got started, or has there been a lot different than kind of what you expected as you jumped into the game?
I think overall it's been what I expected, just kind of from a 50,000 foot like aerial view.
Sure.
But I think that it definitely life kind of comes at you fast when you're the person that's being asked the questions, when you're the person that's being, looked to find answers to the problems that pop up. And again, I'd done 2 internships in baseball. I had worked as a graduate assistant, thought that I had a okay idea of, what it was going to be like. And it's immensely different when, being the intern versus, being the person that's being, asked to do these items or these certain things that you may not have been fully exposed to as an intern. And so that's definitely been an evolution and a process since I, first started. And there's been a lot of growth, a lot of mistakes that have been made along the way. But I definitely think overall the experience has been good. And I would say it's been way more rewarding than I could have ever imagined too, especially in these last, several years, kind of getting to climb the ladder with a group of, players that we had coming up through the system and being an organization that primarily builds a big league roster from its minor league group. And
mm-hmm.
There's nothing more rewarding than, flipping on the TV at the end of the night and, one of your guys that was with you, a month or 2 earlier is helping the major league team win. Because ultimately that's what we're trying to do. And we're trying to, help these guys, get to the top level to help our club, do the ultimate, goal of winning the World Series. And
mm-hmm.
it's just the rewarding part of that has probably been more than I expected, but it's just been it's been a fun 10 years. It's crazy to think it's already been 10 years. It's definitely went by quickly, but it's such a good experience, but definitely a lot going on when you're the person
mm-hmm.
being looked to.
Yeah. And navigating that kind of being the guy in the role who is responsible for a lot of things, mostly everything at the minor league level. Like you mentioned, you could be the travel secretary and, the therapist and the athletic trainer all in one. Was there a time in your career when things kind of clicked and maybe that quote unquote imposter syndrome kind of went away for you? Or is it just like a constant evolution of learning and becoming kind of the person you are going to be, later in your career?
Yeah. I mean, it's a great question. And I think that after my first few years, and I spent 4 years in short season. And so I got to spend a lot of time in extended spring training with older players that maybe have left back with rehab. And I think as I exited short season, and then I spent a year in low A and a year in high A, and then at the alternate site. And again, that kind of evolution and kind of growth into full season clubs and moving up in level, really, it was like, okay, I can do this. I can do this for a full season. I can, I can kind of withstand the different, pressures that may come with the travel and, some of the different and more unique ballparks that may not have the best amenities. And I think that's definitely been a process. It didn't happen overnight, but,
Yeah.
as you start to work with older players and they challenge you and, worked a year of winter ball in Puerto Rico and got an opportunity to do a WBC qualifier last fall or in the Arizona Fall League a few years ago. Just those experiences over time, I think you kind of gain a little bit more confidence, while also the game has a way of humbling you no matter how much
Sure.
you think and it's that's always going to happen, and embracing that, hey, like there's always going to be more to learn and there's always going to be something that you haven't seen before. But
Hmm.
it's been a process, and it's been a fun ride.
Hmm. And we're gearing up for another ride here. Spring training just around the corner. It feels like the season just ended, then winter meetings and whatnot, and now we're right there. A couple weeks away from some players reporting. Talk a little bit about your off season, kind of what you do, how you operate in the off season, get some time away to spend with your family, and then how you also get prepared to be ready to go in Arizona in just a few short weeks.
Yeah, so I mean, we're definitely fortunate to do get a little bit of downtime during the off season and try to be very intentional about trying to be a good husband and good dad. We have two little ones at home, and they definitely make an immense amount of sacrifice for us to be able to go out and do our job effectively. That's not always the easiest thing in the world, and it definitely takes special people to put up with the schedule that we sometimes operate with. And so try to, during the off season, make up a little bit for lost time, and be intentional about being a good dad and a good husband. But there's also things that take place during the off season that trying to stay in contact with when we're able, and kind of trying to tie up loose ends from the previous season and start to work towards making preparations for it. Seems like when the first of the year hits, things start to move quickly, and so now we're trying to get file review information ready for our physical processes that are coming. There's already a large group out in Arizona that's preparing and starting to get ready to go for spring training, and it seems like it kind of happens a little bit earlier and earlier every year. But we're definitely, and some of our group is already kind of out in full swing, getting ready to go. So it's definitely, things are starting to move, but definitely enjoyed the off season and tried to make the most of that as well.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And when you get to spring training in just a few weeks, I know you're probably extremely familiar with so many of the players, seeing as you've been with the organization for a long time. I'm interested to hear how you kind of operate the Guardians as an athletic training staff, from Lonnie Soloff, James Quinlan, Jeff Desjardins, so many veterans who have seemingly seen it all, been in the big leagues forever. How do you guys work together when you get to spring training? Is it kind of like you separate and work with the players you're familiar with, or all hands on deck? Kind of walk us through, for those that might not know, what like a day at spring training it looks like for the entire athletic training staff.
I think it's definitely an all hands on deck approach. There's so many moving parts to spring training, whether it's using 8 different fields at the complex, various, again, physicals going on, players kind of coming in and out. We talk a lot about this, especially with our interns that we may have during spring training, but it's true for all of us. Sometimes there are parts of spring training that are not overly glamorous. They're long days, and sometimes, younger members of our staff or our intern group, they may be tasked with doing, some of what may be considered as grunt work, but it's extremely important to, helping the day operate. And we all kind of have that role. Some of that role for some of us maybe at upper levels, or, starting to gain a little bit more leadership responsibility of, hey, that may be talking to front office, that may be communicating with the major league staff, that may include, some more time spent on the computer as opposed to like out on the floor. But everybody has their role. And when spring training is at its best, everybody has kind of embraced what that and is ready to adapt and change that role. Like, I mean, if I am over on the major league side of spring training and helping them out for, the day or trying to assist them with some of the needs they may have, my role kind of shifts from, some of that leadership and, front office conversations to, hey, now I'm, the one that's, helping, perform a modality treatment so that somebody else's hands are freed up, or I'm out covering a field so that they can come back inside and prepare for their day. And so everybody's role is pliable, and you got to be ready to adapt. And, whatever we need to do to make it happen, like that's kind of got to be the mentality. And so everybody's role is important, and it may not be overly glamorous, but those things are vital in making, spring training run and operate. And it's definitely a busy time.
And you mentioned the pliable roles of everyone on staff and front office communications and kind of how things go up and down at different levels, especially with everybody in the same place at spring training. I want to talk a bit about communication in your job. I know from interviewing so many of your colleagues across the league that it's very important. But how does kind of your job work at the AA level in terms of communication up, communication down when you have players moving all over the place, and how you kind of communicate with Lonnie Soloff and everybody up in the front office as well?
Yeah, so I mean, and others are spot on. I mean, communication is such a large part of this job, and it's not just being a clear and concise communicator. It's being willing to be the person that's going to initiate communication and being at the forefront of, opportunities where may present themselves for you to kind of manage up a little bit. And people, I think I've noticed that people probably get the most upset when they're blindsided by information, or when they feel like, they've missed something. And it can be uncomfortable at times of, reaching out or trying to push the envelope a little bit, but saying, "Oh, well, I just assume this," is not an appropriate response. And so there are opportunities to, to manage up and to, reach out when you're unsure, and to be comfortable in initiating the communication process to make sure that, hey, ultimately we're all doing this to make sure that our players are getting what they need and making sure that they're on the right path to success, whether that's a rehab assignment, whether that's, how they're currently feeling because they may get called up soon. And again, like that's definitely more immediate. Like we're in close proximity to Cleveland. We have a lot of major league rehabs that come down. Again, like talked about earlier, our organization, we value our internal players that we have. And so it's so important that we're on top of, where those guys are at, because if something, gets missed, I mean, this is a player that could potentially be impacting our major league team in, the next few weeks. So it just, the initiation of communication is something that I've learned of, hey, like, you don't always have to sit back on your heels here and wait for somebody else to reach out to you. You got to kind of be on the forefront of that and be ready to embrace that. But yeah, it's super, super important for our job.
So you talked about taking initiative there, in the training room and in communication, both up and down, with affiliates and with the front office. So I know at the beginning of your career, or I'm assuming, this can be a very scary thing to kind of jump in, take that initiative, not just stand back and wait for things to come to you. So as a younger athletic trainer, when you were coming up, how did you build confidence to, go up to someone who's very seasoned in the athletic training room and communicate and kind of attack that versus sitting back and waiting?
So, I mean, I think I had great role models in that. And we have a guy that's been with our organization, Teddy Blackwell, for, 35 years, I think. And he, was a great mentor for me in some of those early, years of short season that I spent a lot of time with him during extended spring training. And some of that came from making the mistakes and being, coached up through that. But also being like given the power of a voice. Sometimes you feel like as a young athletic trainer or an intern that, hey, like sometimes like I might just need to keep my mouth shut and keep it moving sort of thing.
Hmm.
But knowing kind of and having a feel for the situations of, hey, I need to speak up right now, and that's okay to speak up, and it's okay to be a little bit vulnerable in doing that at appropriate times. And so, I mean, some of that comes with your surroundings and the environment and the culture that's been created in the building before you're even there. That some of that too is just kind of learning the feel for situations and learning, hey, it's okay to to be vulnerable and to ask questions and to own those mistakes when they come up, because we're all going to make them. It's inevitable. It's nothing's ever perfect.
Yeah, and it's interesting to hear you talk about, quote unquote, feel for a situation. I think we've heard that a number of times from, Ryan DePanflo with the Diamondbacks mentioned that, and many others, just how important that feel is. I don't know if that's something that you can teach, or it's something that you're inherently born with, or something you learn along the way. But I know it's a very important characteristic. And I'm wondering, along those lines, you've had the opportunity to pick the brains of so many athletic trainers, super talented people across the league. Um, Going back to the younger group coming up now, outside of, the feel for a situation and navigating that world, uh, is there a skill or a personality trait, looking back on your time now, that you would let other athletic trainers know coming up that is super important to kind of learn, or to create for themselves?
Yeah, I think that feel is hard to define, but I think some of the characteristics that comes with that are humility and being able to take feedback. Like it's so hard to, especially when you're invested in something like, hey, we all want to have the answer. We want to get people better. Like, and those are all good natured qualities, but sometimes that can come with like a little bit of an ego check. Somebody may provide you some feedback that, hey, they're wanting you to get better, and understanding that most people that offer that feedback are doing it in your best interest. And so trying to take a step back, check your ego at the door when you come in, and understand that, hey, there are a lot of talented clinicians that we get to work with, and whether that's our physician group, whether that's our seasoned major league athletic trainers, coordinators, whatnot. There are so many people that have a plethora of experience, and being open enough to be kind of a sponge and absorb that, and to take that in and understand that, hey, it's okay not to know sometimes. You don't have to have all the answers. Nobody expects that of you. Now people expect you to be willing to work to find those answers, but you don't have to have all those answers. And just being willing to take feedback when it's given to you, and not get defensive and think that somebody's attacking you just because something may not have had a positive outcome. And just being open to those things, I think, goes a long way in your long-term development and your relationship building in this game in particular.
Mm-hmm. And that long-term development is something that's so important for an athletic trainer, as they ride the roller coasters and the up and downs of the minor leagues. From your perspective, someone who has so much experience in this area, when it comes to making your way up and just progressing at different levels, and moving up from, rookie ball to AA to AAA to the big leagues, what is your best piece of advice in terms of staying patient? There's so many people have the goal of getting to the big leagues. For some, it takes longer than others, but how do you stay patient and stay in the moment? Or what do you recommend that other younger athletic trainers do to try and, focus on where they are at the current moment?
Yeah. And that's such a big part of it, is not forgetting where you're at currently. You have to understand, and you can look at the bios on the PBAP's website and do the math. I mean, it takes on average probably 12-ish years to get to the to the major league level. Again, some people do it much quicker than that. Some people it takes much longer than that.
Mm-hmm.
But on average, it's like that's probably at least what you're in for. And making wherever you're at, if you're a low A athletic trainer, chances are, like, you're not going to the big leagues tomorrow. Like
Sure.
you have to focus on, making that low A team that you're with your big leagues. Like how can I prepare, my training room to, mimic what a major league athletic training room would look like. Is my stuff organized? Is my stuff well stocked? Am I traveling prepared on road trips? Am I doing the communication, piece of things that, we talked about, earlier? How am I, self improving to make sure that the players that I'm providing for, like I'm providing, quote unquote, big league care for. And I think that, again, it's so easy to lose sight of that when you're in the weeds, and all you can think about is, hey, I want to get to that level. I want to get to that level. I want to get to that level. Yeah. And if you can just kind of take a step back and focus on making wherever you're at your big league club, I think it'll go a long way, and people recognize that, I think, and players certainly appreciate that. We spend so much time together, and it just it goes a long way, and I think it helps you keep a healthy perspective on things, and it's the right way to go about your business too.
Yeah, there's no doubt that people can tell when you're really present and you are making home your actual home. So that it's cool to hear that you really embrace that. Well, Jacob, this has been awesome. I really appreciate you sharing so much valuable information for our audience. To wrap up today's episode, we'll finish with a quick Q&A segment that we call Extra Bases. So we'll get into 4 quick questions to let you share some insight into some of your favorite things about athletic training. So I will kick it off at first base. You've made a handful of stops along the way to your current role with the Guardians. I'm wondering what your favorite athletic training room to work in along the way has been.
So there have been so many, but our home athletic training room in Akron is, just been by and far away probably my favorite place to work. The training room is a great setup. We were very, very fortunate. We have one of the best clubhouse managers in the game, the operations folks at the ballpark. It's just been, Akron has been in such a great place to work, and we have such a good setup that it's fun to be at home there. In terms of, maybe on the road, Hartford, Connecticut is definitely one that sticks out. And so many of these places too, with some of the new minor league standards, are some of the places that used to be probably my least favorite are now on the the upper end of some of the places in the Eastern League. I mean, Erie, Pennsylvania, Binghamton, these places have made some immaculate improvements that have helped us do our job so much better. And it's kind of fun to see that evolution. I'm glad that I got to see some of these places before, but I'm glad that they've made the changes also.
Yeah, it definitely, there can be a wide variety of what you get at any level in athletic training. Moving on to second base, I always say you guys have such a cool vantage point to watch some of the best baseball players in the world. You're in the dugout, unlike many other people. So what's your favorite baseball stadium to sit in the dugout and watch a game?
I think I have 2. One was, so in the New York Penn League, the Staten Island Yankees were in that league, and it's just such a cool ballpark for being a lot of the towns in the New York Penn League were small towns in PA in the Northeast, but getting to go to Staten Island, the backdrop of the stadium is the Statue of Liberty in Lower Manhattan, and it's almost like a little kind of taste of what it would be like to play in the big city, almost. And you're kind of playing in the shadows of Lower Manhattan. And it's just a really, really unique place to watch a game. And I always enjoyed going there during my time with Mahoney Valley. The other place I would say would probably be for more like nostalgic reasons. So growing up in Eastern North Carolina, Kinston, the high A, it just happened to be the high A affiliate of Cleveland at the time. The Kinston Indians is the team that we grew up going to. They were about 45 minutes from where I grew up. And I got an opportunity when I was in high A in Lynchburg, Virginia, to go back. They're now the Down East Wood Ducks, but got to go back and go to Granger Stadium on the other side of things, and a place where I watched so many games growing up. It was very nostalgic to kind of come back in Granger Stadium. It's not like overly glamorous or anything like that, but it was a cool place to go back. And one of the nights we were playing there, they had a throwback Kinston Indians night, and it was kind of a full circle moment for me, and it was neat.
hmm And for anyone out there who's listening, if you have a chance to look up the Staten Island Ferry Hawks Stadium, Jacob is spot on. It's a unbelievable view that you get at probably not at many minor league stadiums. So definitely can appreciate that one. Moving on to third base, you guys travel so much, big cities, small cities, just all over the country. What's your favorite city to visit when you're on the road?
Yeah, so I think I have two answers to this as well. One would be in the Eastern League in Portland, Maine. If you're into seafood, I mean, just great, great cuisine, and it's just kind of a neat town in the summer. We were fortunate to play a couple day games there this past year, and we're able to go and kind of have dinner like normal people. It's a little bit rare sometimes during the season, and it's a cool spot. And it was the first time that I had been there. We had not traveled there the first couple years that I had been in Akron. So Portland, Maine, definitely a cool spot. And then another one from the New York Penn League, stadium, not the best in the world, but Burlington, Vermont, where the Vermont Lake Monsters were at. Burlington is kind of a trendy town where the University of Vermont's at. Again, some great places to eat, and just a cool little town, especially the downtown area down on Lake Champlain. It's a really cool town, and like I said, I've got to go to some places that have just been really cool, and I would have never imagined at the start of my athletic training career. So yeah, both of those places are great.
Yeah, I think a lot of those smaller East Coast minor league cities or towns, whatever you want to call it, are super underrated. Definitely a couple that you mentioned there. Moving on to home plate, the last question for today. You've been in professional baseball for quite a while. I assume when you jumped into your first internship and job, you had some scary, some awesome, some all different kinds of moments. But did you have a singular like welcome to professional baseball moment at some point in your career?
Yeah, so I think it was probably right off the bat. So, I'd interned a couple times, been a GA athletic trainer. Again, like I kind of mentioned, think that you have a little bit of a grasp for what's going on. And, I'd been through a spring training and extended spring training. And the way that, short season used to be was, the draft was in early June. You basically left extended spring training, had a couple days, you started your season, and half of your roster came flooding in from the draft, and a lot happened in a very short amount of time. And I remember traveling, with the group to Mahoney Valley. We were starting on the road in Jamestown, New York, trying to, organize catering, make sure I had meal money ready to go. Our travel stuff was locked in and set up time-wise, getting itineraries out. Meanwhile, we have players coming in for treatment. All of the medical supplies that it ordered was just sitting in boxes in the training room. My phone's ringing every 3 minutes from front office of, hey, this player just signed, they're coming your way tomorrow, and trying to schedule physicals before we go on the road. And I just remember sitting down, and it was 2 a.m. in the office in Mahoney Valley going, what did I get myself into? Am I truly ready for this? And I got a lot of people that, stuck their neck out for me here that I don't want to let down. And, it was definitely a humbling moment, and there've been plenty of humbling moments along the way, but I'll never forget sitting in that office and, going, oh my gosh, I'm really in for it now. And, it's been good. And I've slowly gotten better at how to mitigate, some of the chaos over the years, but yeah, definitely a humbling moment early on in my career.
Yeah, I'm sure it's awesome to sit back now and remember what that felt like, and you can really appreciate it now that your perspective has probably changed quite a bit since you've advanced so far in your career. Well, Jacob, thanks so much for joining the show today. We really appreciate your time, dedication to PBATs and athletic training, and wish you and everybody in Cleveland the best of luck in spring training coming up here soon.
Well, thanks so much for having me. It's been a pleasure to be on, and yeah, thanks so much.
Thank you for joining us on this episode of Inside Athletic Training. We hope you've gained valuable insights, inspiration, and knowledge to fuel your athletic training journey. If you enjoyed today's show, don't forget to subscribe, rate, and review on your favorite platform. And also, stay connected with us on pbats.com for more news about athletic training and sports medicine.